Hi there. Merry Christmas if it's Christmas or whenever you see this. And I'm so happy that you're with us at this point, whether it's Christmas night or any other time, because we have a great show planned for you. This is Lighting the Way with Beth Green and friends. And I've got a couple of friends who will be joining us shortly. But first, I'm going to, as I usually do, kind of lay out some ideas about what we're talking about. So, tonight, now I did say last week that I thought that I was going to talk about the Messiah is here and it's us. And that's true. But this this thought came to me today, and I want to talk about this, and they really relate, which is put the revolution back into Christmas, a different way to celebrate. Now, uh, people don't usually associate Christmas with revolution, do they? But actually, that's what Christmas was. I mean, I don't even know if there was a Jesus, right? But at least on a symbolic level, what Jesus was a revolutionary in every way. And I want to talk about that a little bit tonight. And I want to talk about why we need to put the revolution back into Christmas. Because, yeah, everybody knows Christmas is a time to eat, very important, of course, a time to socialize, maybe a time to drink and eat too much, a time to be with family, a time for gifts, and all of this. But the essence of Christmas was the birth of a new consciousness. And we are desperate for a new consciousness today. Now, here is my friend who's going to be with me on the show today. And he's the first friend, but the other friends will be coming soon. So just say hi. Hi. Anyway, what do I mean about the revolution? What's this about, this revolution? You know, it is a truth that many Catholic priests and nuns, especially in Latin America, I'm aware of, were revolutionaries. And I mean literally revolutionaries because they were standing up to military dictatorships and to torture and to all of that. And in fact, the Pope, our current Pope Francis, came out of that tradition from Argentina. But it isn't just that there were, and there are, and I should say there are revolutionary religious people today as well, people who carry that burning desire for social justice. And you know they are revolutionary because they're standing up to the entire ethic of our society, and that's quite a revolution, I want to tell you. But let's take a look at some of the aspects of this revolution. And this follows up on our show last week when I was talking about what causes us stress is capitalism and the way it works and the way we're squeezed and the profit motive and how we're always so struggling to keep afloat and that there's not much of a safety net and all of that. But here I want to talk a little bit about the revolution itself that Jesus heralded, if he existed, and if he didn't, it came from somewhere, and I really appreciate it. And it was a revolution in the way we treat one another. You know, I grew up Jewish, so I didn't celebrate Christmas at all. Um, and by the way, Hanukkah is going on right now, which is also rebellion, you know, fighting against oppression. Um, but what the Jesus teaching is about getting away from that old way of being, getting away from corruption, getting away from exploitation, getting to the essence of what religion and spirituality were supposed to be about, which is kindness, love, compassion. I mean, you look at the Old Testament, and it was all about, you know, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. Um, that's pretty violent. And there's a lot of violence in that Old Testament. And Jesus was trying to bring in, and we're going to call it Jesus, as, as assuming there was such a historic person. He was saying, turn the other cheek. Is that not a revolution in consciousness? Isn't that a revolution in the way we think about it, each other? What about the meek shall inherit the earth, right? This is about caring for the poor. Didn't Jesus say something like, the way you treat the least of my brethren, that's how you're treating me, dudes? Is that the current ethic in our world, in our society, which is make as much money as you can, step on the other guy, doesn't matter who you hurt? It's pretty bad news as far as I'm concerned. So that kind of thinking, the emphasis on money, and of course, Jesus also overthrew the money lenders in the temples. It's like, no, the spirituality and money don't combine. This is not what it's about. So it was really fantastic at that time of history to have a teacher, a rabbi, a Jewish teacher who was reminding us of oneness, of mutual support, about supporting one another, about loving one another, about having compassion, about having kindness. And guys, that was 2,000 years ago. What's wrong with us now? Haven't we learned anything? We're supposed to be living in a Christian era. I don't see it. I don't know about you. And so when I say put the revolution back into Christmas, I mean get back to the essence of what Jesus was teaching, and many, many great spiritual teachers have taught. And why do I think this is so important now? Well, it's pretty obvious. I mean, we have a president who now wants to buy Greenland and, wants to dominate everything and everybody. We have billionaires running the government. I don't think Jesus would have gone along with that. Do you? I don't care. People say that, oh, Jesus sent Trump. I don't see it. All that means is that you think that under Trump, you're going to get some advantage. I don't think that Jesus would have approved of the oppression of women, of minorities, the hurting people, the focus on making money as being the purpose of society, the purpose of life. On the contrary, see, we believe here, and by the way, I have a nonprofit corporation called The Stream, and we are not wealthy. But what we believe in is that the purpose of society is to meet the needs of people. And that is the purpose of the economy. So there is a lot to say about that. But I want to start with this simple idea. When you see that there's a new movie out about Bob Dylan in his revolutionary phase, and people are like, woo, woo, they're interested, right? When you look at the response to Luigi Mangione and his assassination of the United Healthcare CEO, not that I'm cheering it. I mean, I don't believe in murdering people. However, what does that tell you? That tells you that we need a revolution of who we are on the inside, of our ethics, of our politics, of our society, of our economy, and that people know it and they are dying for it. So right now, I'm going to bring on my guests, and I'm going to try to do this right. First off is James Maynard. And by the way, James has a Santa hat too, but I can't seem to find mine, so he lent me his. So you see, that's generosity. Lizzie? Oh, they're all over the place. This is interesting. I have no idea. Let me try this. Okay, Todd Benton, he's got his name up, and Amy. Welcome, James, Lizzie, Todd, and Amy. Welcome to the show. And I'm assuming that you heard my introductory remarks, so you know what we're talking about tonight. They didn't know, they didn't get prepared. And I hope you're having a good Christmas. And now, what do we have to say? I'm going to check out and see. All right. Now I can open the chat. Okay. Just in case. Okay. So who would like to share first? Amy?
Well, when I heard about revolution, I thought, I didn't expect what it was that you're going to say at all. I thought it was something military, something violent. And I thought, this doesn't sound right. And I thought, oh, wow. I don't tend to think of revolution in the same vein as kindness, caring, and so on. But that is a revolution if that's not what's happening, but people want it and want to stand up and fight for it.
That is a beautiful remark. And of course, that is the revolution. See, we say we have to have a revolution on all levels, on the inside and on the outside, because if we don't change the economic system, we are going to have violence, which is what we have now. The abuse of workers, the abuse of women, the abuse of this is violence that's already taking place. And we need a revolution on the inside and in our society and our economy to stop that violence. But I love your comment. Thank you, Amy. Who else would like to share? Todd.
I love your message tonight because it's just so needed, and people are not saying it, unfortunately. I mean, I don't hear it in the general. Maybe people are saying it. There may be people that are out there saying it, but it needs to be said, and it needs to be the focus. I mean, this is the so I love the idea of a revolution in consciousness, because all the other revolutions are meaningless if we don't have the change on the inside and the way we think about each other, the way we treat each other. Then all of it's meaningless. It's, okay. I mean, they intertwine, they're all interconnected is the truth, really. But I think the inner work is, to me, the most important. And that really is where the revolution needs to take place. So I'm glad I'm here for this tonight. I kind of like Amy. I was like, revolution. I think I know what Beth's talking about, because this is not the first time, but it's wonderful to really dig into the core message of Christmas on Christmas. That is the whole idea, right? Love, connection, treating your neighbor as yourself, just the whole. So I'm glad I'm here, and I'm glad to be a part of this.
Thank you. And sharing, right? Yeah. Turning whatever it is, something fish, loaves into fish, or whatever it is. I didn't have
water into wine.
All right. Water into wine. Right. So, all right. Wonderful. Who would like to? We have somebody making a comment, but it makes no sense to me. It's about popcorn.
It's a lot of emojis, I think, that didn't come through.
Is that what it is?
I think so.
Oh, well, Logan, I'm hoping that good vibes. Thank you, Todd. If you sent us over emojis on this thing, it's not showing us that, but I'm very happy. It feels like very supportive. Thank you. Okay, who would James?
Yes, I'm reminded of one of the teachings of Jesus attributed to him, which is do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Now, look at what we have in our society. We have people at the top making humongous amounts of money and owning tremendous amounts of wealth. Well, if they put themselves in the shoes of the worker at the lowest level, that would change everything. If they would level out the income, level out the wealth, and be kind and grant the employee benefits that are needed. We see some of that in employee-owned businesses, where, wow, those employees are really treating themselves well. And the profits, instead of going to the top, are being channeled back into the workers. So that's treating others as you would like to be treated. That would be truly revolutionary, given what's going on now. Let alone the idea of moving away from exploitation and domination of others into caring and sharing.
Yeah, thank you. By the way, I don't know if that was a Jesus teaching or that. Does anybody know? It's the Golden Rule, and it may have been buried in in the Old Testament. But the Old Testament also has, fighting and blood and all
Yeah.
that kind of.
Well,
A lot of religions have a version of that.
Yes,
yeah,
they
it
do.
is in the New Testament.
It is. Thank you, James.
Mhm.
He grew up Christian. You see, we
Yeah, I
have
grew up in
a
the
couple of
mainstream
people.
Christianity. Yeah.
A couple of people around who know what. Thank you, thank you. I'm going to address that very issue in a few minutes if we have time. But anyone else want to share right now? Yes, Lizzie.
When I saw the title "Revolutionary for Christmas," I'm like, what? And I never thought about that. But yeah, that Jesus was so different from most people, and saying, hey, let's treat each other differently than what we have. And for 2,000 years to go by and for
Poor
things to be much different, if I don't know if they're worse, but it doesn't feel like people took it to heart. So I'm wondering what could happen, or is there something we could do or something to help people take this to heart?
That is such a good question, and I'm hoping that in future shows we actually start getting more into what are we going to do about it. But the first thing we have to do is acknowledge that this is the situation, and we have to try to understand where it comes from, and why it is the way it is. And that's a long story. But there have always been, I don't mean always in every place, but certainly going back forever, there have been very exploitative societies and economies. You had the Pharaoh and then you had the slaves, right? And it's not just capitalism, where people have been exploited, people have been hurt, people have been used. I did say last time that I was going to talk a little bit about some of the Marxist economic theory, which actually wasn't from Marx. There was others before him or at the same time who were talking about the same thing. It's like, why do I feel that we need a revolution in capitalism? Uh, and maybe it's beyond. We have to get beyond capitalism, and I'd like to share that if my panel feels okay with that. Nobody is jumping up and down saying I have something to say. Okay, so I'd like to pursue this. So I'm going to not put this in Marxist terms. I'm going to put this in common sense terms that everybody is going to understand. Where does profit come from? Profit is the difference between what you can sell something
Right, and what you charge.
and what you. And we have crossover. Paranormal Society says hello, everyone. Well, hello to you. So I used your whole name because it wasn't a personal name. So thanks for showing up and chatting with us. So what that is, Elizabeth says, love this message. Yay. Okay. So now let's say you own a shoe store, you make shoes, people come in and buy your shoes, and you have somebody working for you cleaning up the store. Now, if you were to give that employee as much money as you were making from the shoes, you would have no profit. And nobody's going to risk anything in order to do that. But if you think about the difference, and I'm going to show you something, if you barter, it's always equal value. People say, well, okay, I've got 3 chickens, you've got 2 tubs of lard, and I don't know, and 6 muskrats, And this feels like an equal exchange. We will barter, right? But when you bring in money, then you start to pay someone for something. You use a coin. You're not bartering your chicken. You're taking your money. You're bartering your money in a way. So how do you get that money? You have to get it from selling something. You're either selling, an object, or you're selling your labor power. You're going somewhere and you're working for them. So now we look at the small businessman, and the small mom and pop store, and everybody in the family is working at it, and they try to make ends meet by doing that. But now let's say you start to get a little bit bigger, you have more than one employee, and so on and so on and so on. And now all of a sudden, you are making a profit off of everybody who is there. Now, what do I mean by that? Now, this gets a little bit, you may have to think about this for a second. I cannot work for you if you don't pay me enough to survive. If you don't pay me enough to raise my children. See, now that's slavery. Slavery, you don't have to worry about paying the slave enough for them to feed themselves and take care of their medical bills and raise their children. No, you just needed to buy slaves, and if they died and they didn't have, medical care, well, who cares? You could replace them with some other slave. And so what you needed to do was make enough profit in order to buy more slaves. I mean, this is gross, but this is the way it was, right? Now, if you're not a slave, if you're just a worker slave, and this goes all the way up. I mean, I'm not just talking about the people at the bottom, the janitor, the workers and the factory workers, and then there's the clerical workers, and then there's the management, and every one of those people has to get paid enough to survive at some level and to raise the next generation of workers. And that's what Marx called the cost of labor power. He didn't use exactly those words, but that's close enough. So if you don't have that, people die. You don't have workers. So now what has happened is that capital, and by the way, the cost of doing business is not just the laborer who works directly for you in your company. Think about this. Every single piece of raw material or the cost of transportation, who's doing that? You have gold in the ground and it has no value. The only time gold has value is when you take it out of the ground. Who does that, guys? Workers. Get the gold out of the ground. So supposing you're getting gold, you're paying for the value of the labor of the people who pulled that gold out of the ground, and also the cost of transportation, which is also people. Now you say, well, wait a minute, something is going on a train. I'm paying for the train. Well, who built the train? Who got the steel? So understanding all of this, you begin to get the idea, and I'm going really fast, but I want you to understand that it's all about labor. It's the cost of your business is how much it costs to have human beings take natural resources and turn them into a commodity that you can use, sell, and so on. And it's the same thing with the people who work for you. Now, what happens when you have a society like this? You make a shoe, you have a connection to that shoe, you know what it's worth, you have a general idea when you're bartering. And you have an idea, but you go to work for some mega corporation. You have no idea what the value of what you're producing is. And there are machines that are producing things so fast, it's like, well, that's a whole other story. I can get to that another time. But see, what happens is you're alienated from your own product. You may work for a corporation You never use the product at that corporation that you have built. You build the airplanes, you may be in one, but most of us aren't going to buy one. So this is what has happened. We have a very abstract kind of society where you don't really know the value of what you're doing. And then you start having stocks, and then you have hedge funds, and everything is getting further and further and further away from the guy who made the shoe, who got the leather, who, pulled the gold out of the ground. And we don't know anything. And you know what's happening is, as these giant corporations, or as these entities in commerce and industry got bigger and 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 bigger. Now this is the important part. The amount of profit that they're getting is so astronomical, and you're not seeing it. You're not seeing it yourself. We talked about income inequality. Everybody knows about income inequality. We have like billionaires who are running this government and who are running industry who have no relationship. People who are like Elon Musk has a hideous record in terms of labor. Hideous. Firing workers, forcing people at Amazon too, terrible working conditions, that they're not doing it. And now here, this is the trick that I didn't say. When you make a profit for a business, you are giving your power to the owners of that business and the people who are profiting from it. You are giving your power, because you're only getting less and less and less and less and less of the amount of money, the productivity, and they're getting more and more and more and more. That's what is happening. Productivity goes up, wages don't. What does that mean? You're making more money for the bosses, and you're not getting more money in exchange. And so what's happening is those people now have more money to buy elections, to run the world, to do anything they damn please, to oppress you, to throw you out, to fire you when you're striking, to open another business somewhere else. Do you get what I am saying? Every time you're working for a company that's making a profit, which I understand that they need to make some profit, you are losing the value of what you did, because they're only giving you enough to survive. And you know something? See, because if you don't survive, you can't work. You probably don't know this, or you may not know this. But in the 19th century, they started having public health measures. And you know why? Because people were getting shorter. People were getting sicker. You didn't have workers because they were not surviving. That's like having slaves, later on in history, when they stopped the slave trade in the United States, they had to take better care of the slaves and make sure they survived, because they couldn't buy another one for less money than it would cost them to feed the people. So you're seeing this nightmare. It's like every day you go to work for United Healthcare, for example, or any one of the giants, you are creating more and more power for the owners, for the major stockholders, for anybody who's really making profit, all of this. They're getting more and more powerful, and you're getting less. Now, do you see why I say we need a revolution? That's the way the system works. It's the way it worked in the early 1800s and the 19th century, and it's the way it works now. But it's getting worse and worse, because we have greater and greater productivity and more concentration of wealth in the hands of a few. Now, do you wonder what's wrong with our society? Now, look at the people. Look at us. We're stressed. We don't feel loved. We don't feel connected. People take drugs. People drink. And by the way, people up in the corporate ladder, vice presidents and all of that, I have news for you, dudes. You're pawns too. They want to think that they're better. Oh yeah, they make more money than we do, but they don't make the billions, and they can be fired by the people above them, and they're under stress. And I used to work for corporate America, not as a large as a guy up there, but on the bottom. But I saw how it worked. Everybody was afraid of everybody. People were tense, people were drinking, people were under enormous pressure to make more profit. And now they're trying to privatize Medicare. Dr. Oz, who is Trump's nominee for health and for Medicare and Medicaid, he wants to privatize. It's already messed up. It's being privatized because that means that everything is going to be run by the profit motive. So do you get what I'm saying? So now, as Todd was saying earlier, we need an inner revolution where we care about one another. But I'll tell you, unless we start creating a society where people get their needs met, it's really hard to think about that. People are too stressed out, too worried about how they're going to pay their bills. People are alienated. It's very difficult. It's very difficult to make massive social change. But I'm here to say, Merry Christmas. We have to have an inner revolution. We have to have a political revolution where corporations don't own us and they can't, and one man can't try to run the government because he's the richest man on earth. We need a social revolution where people, the meek, are not fighting each other, but are saying, well, wait a minute, why don't we support one another? It's like when the union started, right? It's like, why don't we support one another? We need all of it. We need all of it. And so it sounds like, oh, it's too much. I can't do it. But if we don't do it, there's no end. And we see the destruction that we have done to our planet, the not caring about the environment. It's just another example of how crazy our system has become. I mean, capitalism gave us a lot of progress, but now it's killing itself and it's killing us. So I'd like to come back to my panel and give them a chance to say something. Yes, Amy.
Well, I was thinking that it's become so ingrained in me that groups that I work for, I'm a physician doing home health evaluations, but it's a huge company, countrywide. And so I just am supposed to and expect that I'm supposed to accept a lot of their rules. Like if someone doesn't show up for an appointment or they cancel, there's no payment for that. There are a lot of things that are not, it's just too bad. And I accept that. And I'm just listening to this thinking that I could ask, how come? Or what can I do about this?
Yeah. Yeah.
Or if I'm able to do bilingual exams, so they're not paying a company they work with who does translation. Maybe that's minuscule compared to the number of a gazillion exams that they have. So maybe it doesn't make much difference if I'm not having to use it. But on the other hand, I would like to ask to be paid more if I'm going to do those without asking for a translator. And what I'm noticing is that I would be afraid to do that they'll say, well, they like buying slaves, except it's not like buying slaves. I shouldn't have said that. That was not well said. But that there's plenty of other people looking for work.
That's right.
So if I'm not happy with those terms, they'll find someone else.
Oh, honey, you have really put your finger on it because see, you as an individual, that's why unions came
right,
in.
Which we don't have, at least that I know of, in this particular company.
No, you probably don't. And there was, there used to be revolutionaries in the union movement in the United States, but they got beat up and pushed out of the union movement because God forbid you should be considered a revolutionary or socialist. That is, terrible. So you're right. You're right. And it's going to take a lot, but we have to start the conversation. It's like people beginning to understand how this system works. So thank you for that comment. Anyone else like to share a thought? Yes, Todd. We don't hear you.
It can be overwhelming when you really confront the sheer magnitude of how powerless we are as individuals, but like you said, but if we don't do anything, I mean, we have to start somewhere. So that's what I like what you're saying. I was finding myself going, wow, this is intense. It's structural, and with more power concentrating at the top, it does make people just grasping for that next paycheck.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think the number of people that lives paycheck to paycheck is like 60%.
Mm-hmm.
So it makes it very difficult for them to have the mobility, any kind of flexibility to be able to fight the movement, right? So because they don't have time to get educated and learn, and but that is kind of the part of the system. It's like the people on top know that, and they take advantage of you're just living paycheck to paycheck, and you're just trying to make ends meet, and you don't have time to do anything else. So
that's right. Keep us too busy.
Yeah.
And keep us divided so we never figure out that we're all getting screwed.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Yes, James.
I like the idea of establishing a countervailing power. Unions had a countervailing power. Government can have a countervailing power. If enough people vote for the right people in public offices who bring out that countervailing power, saying, we're going to regulate those businesses. We're going to stop price gouging. We're not going to allow that to happen. Stuff like that. I think we need to come together and create that countervailing power.
Absolutely. And see, one of the smart things that they do is the sexual divide, the gender divide. Mm-hmm. Keep women making less money, keep women in the, afraid to walk on the street.
And make it not possible to find out what their male counterparts are earning.
Absolutely. Keep women down. I have a lot to say about what women's work has to do with all of this, but not all in one day. I think I loaded you up. For those of you who already knew this, thank you for allowing me to remind you or say it again. But a lot of people don't realize it, don't really understand what capitalism really is. It's just a system where you have people who have the owns of what they call means of production, and the rest of us work for them. Right. and people say, yeah, but they have other costs, the cost of the internet, but it's all labor power. That's all it is. We human beings, without our labor, there is nothing. Even AI, I don't think AI is going to be able to take over all the labor that people do. And they keep us too busy to think, too stressed to even think about getting together and demanding, and too divided as well. So we're going to be closing this pretty soon, but I'm wondering if any of my panelists have any more comments about this topic, or any of you were aware of this or had thought about this before.
I hadn't really thought about it before, so I'm glad it's coming up.
Are you a little shocked?
Yeah.
I remember, hearing the argument, well, it isn't just your workers. I mean, you're paying for the shipment, and you're paying for marketing, and you're paying, well, what that's all being done by people. Everything, if the cloth that you're wearing on your body, the food that you eat, the wood that your house is made of, the bricks, is all laborers, people who worked to transform natural resources into something that could be consumed and used to make profit and also to meet our needs. But things are kind of upside down. So, yes, Amy?
Well, I was just going to say I had a recording I made years ago, and it's pretty simple. I pay a company to make extra copies when I've sold the last one. So I'm the one who decides what I'm going to charge.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm left with asking what seems like a fair profit.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just on one thing, not on multi-layers of people.
Mm-hmm.
And there doesn't seem to be much of anyone asking that question.
No.
Or there were at one point some company that said that the owners would never make more than 100 times the lowest pay, something like that. But that didn't last.
No.
Because it could be thousands of times, if not more, than the lowest earner, even though it's the lowest earners that are making the things happen.
And you know, it is possible to run a society without using the profit motive. However, we don't know how to do that, and we are not even allowed to think about it. We're not allowed to think about it. We're supposed to be thinking along the traditional way. So, how I would like to conclude
Right.
tonight's show is to remind you that Jesus, or whatever the heck he or she was really aware of what's really important, which is love and connection. And that's what satisfies the soul. And that Jesus was really aware of corruption. And Jesus was really aware of the powers against him and everybody who stands up and fights for justice. And Jesus was crucified. Do I need to remind you? Nevertheless, and a lot of people in all walks of life have fought for decency, for honesty, for kindness. So, yeah, we may have a tough road ahead of us, but nothing good has come out of doing nothing.
You have
So,
to think outside the box, which you're not even aware of what the box is fully.
that's right. But here we're doing it. So, I would like to thank you all for joining me tonight. And we are, please come back next Wednesday at 6:30 p.m. Pacific time. Who knows what I'm going to be talking about next time? But you are invited to Lighting the Way with Beth Green and friends. And here we go. Hello.